So much is changing in the world of college football. It felt like yesterday when Georgia and TCU faced off for eternal bragging rights for the 2022 season, and it is already March 1st of 2023. Winter of 2023 could not have gone by any faster. And yet, here we are. Michigan's spring practice has already begun, and many other Big Ten schools are going to follow suit or have already followed suit. Today's going to be all Big Ten football talk, from expansion into what is likely going to be a dead Pac-12 if they don't get their act together. I might also touch on Florida State and Clemson, because if the Big Ten went all the way out to California, who knows? Maybe they will attack the ACC. So we'll touch on conference expansion. We'll touch on some spring games. And I also do want to, of course, touch on the 3-6-6 scheduling that the Big Ten will do after this coming 2023 season starting in 2024. What teams got the hardest matchups and hardest permanent rivals, and what teams got off a little easy. It'll be interesting to see. Before we get further in this video, though, I want you all to leave a like button, hit that subscribe button to help this community grow to 10,000 subs, and comment what team you would most want the Big Ten to reel on in and join the Big Ten Conference, which already will have 16 members in 2024, USC, UCLA, plus the other 14 schools from the current Big Ten East and West that we have all come to know and love. First and foremost, I want to talk about college football expansion. The Big Ten is reportedly targeting up to 4 schools for realignment, per report. This is from SportsIllustrated.com. College football headquarters on Fan Nation. I will link this article down below. It is written by James Parks, published February 27th, just 2 days ago. College football expansion doesn't appear to be finished just yet if power brokers in the Big Ten have their way. The conference is expected to target schools that are current members of the Pac-12, according to a report by college football insider Matt Hayes. Big Ten officials want to pursue at least 2 and up to 4 Pac-12 universities for memberships. I, of course, this is going away from the article, diverging from what is written. College football with Sam, and am in favor of this. USC and UCLA, just those two, outside of when they play each other in what will definitely be a protected rivalry, will have to fly well out of their own way to play other Big Ten universities. I do not think that's wise, not just for them, but for other Big Ten universities. So I think it would be cool if they could have, let's say, Oregon, Washington, Cal, Stanford, heck, even Utah, though Utah isn't on the list of 4. That would be Oregon, Washington, California, and Stanford. But those schools coming into the fold, that would be, in my opinion, that would be, it would help. It would make it make more geographical sense. It would expand the Big Ten's footprint. If you were to talk about Utah, that would expand the Big Ten's footprint to all 4 time zones in the lower 48 states. The Big Ten is reportedly, this is going back to the article, zeroing in on Washington and Oregon as its preferred options for realignment. With UCLA and USC gone, Washington and Oregon would be, outside of Utah, the remaining powerful schools, the schools with big brands and recent football success in the Pac-12. Reeling them in, you'd also get the Seattle TV area. If you got Utah, you'd get really the entire state of Utah, Salt Lake City area. You'd also get a solid football program in Kyle Whittingham and company. And then for Oregon, big brand, Nike, multiple uniforms. They're known by every college football fan base, despite despite not having a national title, they're flashy. They have a national brand, national name. I think targeting the Pac-12, especially in its current weak state, is a genius move. It's something that has to be done for the Big Ten to continue to have success. Last offseason, the Big Ten announced a bombshell move when it added West Coast prestige programs USC and UCLA, both based in the Los Angeles media market. Correction, there's no offseason, only preseason. That decision helped the Big Ten sign a record media deal worth more than $7 billion over 7 years, but it also raised concerns about travel and logistics. Students from the two LA schools will have to travel a minimum of 1,300 miles to play road games, with Nebraska being the closest Big Ten opponent geographically. That very real problem has inspired officials inside the Big Ten to consider adding more West Coast members to ease some of those travel requirements, which I think, again, is a absolute necessity. Plus, the more teams, the better. More money, more unique competition and unique matchups. And the Pac-12 and Big Ten have always had a very close relationship. Look at the Rose Bowl, where it was exclusively, with very rare exception, exclusively Pac-12 and Big Ten schools. This isn't the first time the two Pacific Northwest schools have been connected to the Big Ten and its expansion plans. A year ago, there were insider reports that the universities could be persuaded to leave the Pac-12 fold if the price was right. Action Network reported that officials from both schools met with Big Ten personnel about potentially joining the conference in the future. Both are considered highly valuable football investments that would improve the conference's quality of schedule and extend its influence into the Northwest market. As of now, the Pac-12 is the only Power 5 league still working on a media rights deal. If that doesn't come through in the near future, the whole conference will totally fall apart as the Big 12 is righted ship. They're obviously looking to expand since their only two blue bloods are departing for the SEC. The Big 12 is also out, obviously, to expand. And the SEC, I think the SEC wants to stay within its geographical footprint, but look at the ACC and Florida State and Clemson, bringing up how they don't think they'll be able to compete at the highest level with how the ACC is currently operating. Notable schedule change. This preseason, Ohio State canceled its previously scheduled home-and-home series with Washington. I commented on Mark Rogers' channel asking if he thought that could be because Washington was considering joining the conference. It was a move that surprised industry insiders and ramped up speculation that Washington could be in play to join the Big Ten. Last season, the SEC directed Georgia and Tennessee to call off their scheduled series with Oklahoma after it was revealed that the Sooners and Texas would be joining the Southeastern Conference no later than 2025. Now Texas and OU are joining the SEC in 2024. That's the end of that article. Again, it's linked down below. That article, I think, is a really good sounding board for a lot of my points and opinions. The SEC expansion probably isn't going to stop. Now, if the ACC makes some moves, maybe they dig into some, I don't know, maybe whether it's what the remnants of the American are or the Sun Belt, they tighten their deals. I don't know. They get their act together, which I don't know exactly how that would happen. I'm not an expert in TV rights, media, but let's say they get their act together. Maybe then the SEC expansion will stop. But I don't know if the ACC is going to get its act together, and even if they do, the lucrative Southeastern Conference money, their prestige, the fact that the SEC has dominated college football on the national scale, tell me that wouldn't be attractive to Clemson and Florida State, who, of course, like all universities, want more money so their athletic programs can have better financing and have more resources, especially in this era of NIL where eventually athletes might become employees of the university through one way or another, or maybe they aren't technically employees, but somehow the university can still directly pay them. Money is becoming a bigger and bigger deal. It was already a big deal, but the level of urgency that you have as a program to increase your budget, especially if you want to compete in the realm of college football, is just exponentially growing. And when you move from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, or the ACC to the SEC, you're doubling your revenue pool for football, if not maybe tripling it. That's how lucrative the Big Ten and the SEC are compared to the Pac-12 and the ACC. Now, the Big 12, they've somewhat figured themselves out. They've somewhat stabilized. Texas and OU left. BYU, Cincinnati, UCF, and Houston, successful group of 5 programs, and BYU's an independent with a massive media base due to its Mormon affiliation. Successful move. They've righted the ship, and if the Pac-12 collapses, don't be surprised if they bring Colorado back into the fold, the Arizona schools, and potentially Utah. And seeing that they have West Virginia already near the ACC, maybe they could pull an ACC school or 2. The Big Ten, if the ACC implodes, it wouldn't shock me if they tried something out there, especially with schools who fulfill the academic requirements. And we already know that the SEC is involved in the ACC's footprint. Both are in the southeast part of the country. So the SEC picking up potentially Florida State or Clemson wouldn't surprise me at all. But that's a side note. We're talking about Big Ten football. Here's the immediate future for the Big Ten. The Big Ten will likely be a 20-team Super League and will stretch from coast to coast in the near future. I fully anticipate that whether it is the 4 schools mentioned, Oregon, Washington, California, and Stanford, or maybe it's some other schools, Oregon, Washington, I don't know who else, maybe 2 ACC schools. Pittsburgh, for example, fulfills the academic requirement. So does Iowa State and Kansas. I guarantee you the Big Ten could poach even from a stable Big 12. But Iowa State and Pittsburgh have rivalries within the Big Ten that would potentially lead them to being blocked. And Kansas would provide only for a research and basketball-based basis, not a football-based basis. And football by far makes the most money compared to all sports in America. It's a given fact. So it is most likely going to be Oregon, Washington, California, Stanford, maybe some others, but the Big Ten is going to be a super conference. It's them, the SEC, and I do think the Big 12 will serve as this third league that will have the same respect in theory as a power conference, but in reality it will be known that it's the SEC and Big Ten that run everything, and the new Big 12 they'll have shots and they'll have opportunities, but they don't have any blue blood program. They won't have the same national perspective, resources, let alone recruiting footprint that the SEC and Big Ten do. Their potential power and their ceiling for performance in college football will be limited compared to the Big Ten in the Southeastern Conference. But that is about conference expansion. That's about the size of the Big Ten. Let's talk about some things that are less about theory and that are things that are being uncovered as the days go on and as 2024 inches closer to us. Before we get into that, though, I want to mention spring game dates just to make you guys all aware. Big Ten spring game dates. Michigan kicks everyone off. Their spring game is on April 1st. Their spring practice began February 20th. Indiana's spring game, along with Ohio State's and Penn State's, is April 15th. Illinois, their spring game is April 20th. Nebraska's spring game, along with Iowa's, Wisconsin's, Minnesota's, Northwestern's, and Purdue's, are all April 22nd. Maryland's, Rutgers is April 29th, and Michigan State's spring game is to be determined. This is by an article by On3 Sports. It includes talk about each team, like about a paragraph of information for each team, talking about some interesting storylines, and mentions when spring practice and the spring game begin for each Big Ten team for the 2023 season. I'll link that down below for you all to check out. Now let's get to an article by Spartans Wire that projects every Big Ten team's 3 permanent rivals once USC and UCLA join the league. Expansion is coming, and whether you like it or not, after this season, the East Division and the West Division will be very likely no more. There will be no more Wisconsin and Iowa coming over from the West just to be used as a sounding board by Ohio State, Michigan, the occasional Penn State or Michigan State to allow them to continue on their New Year's Six Bowl or college football playoff run and get a nice trophy. Hopefully, this is kind of skipping past the second point to the third, I'm hoping the Big Ten championship game will be far more competitive with the round-robin scheduling. That's sort of what's going on here. It's not exactly round-robin scheduling, though that is a possibility, but the new scheduling system will be much closer to round-robin. That's for sure. It will not be divisional-based, so the schedules are all going to be more balanced. They're going to be more even, more evenly matched, and not lopsided. You're not going to get a super easy Big Ten West schedule, an uber challenging Big Ten East schedule. That's just not what's going to happen. I think Michigan, Ohio State, UCLA, and USC got the toughest updated 3-6-6 conference schedule draws. But let's start from the top and talk about Illinois. Their permanent rivals are projected to be Northwestern, who's in-state, Purdue, who they play every year, and Rutgers, who's a similar program based off of history. For Indiana, their permanent rivals are projected to be Maryland, Michigan State. Michigan State and Indiana play for the old brass spittoon, and Purdue, who is an in-state rival. For Iowa, which I think this one's pretty easy, they do have 3 big rivalries: Minnesota, the Floyd of Rosedale, Nebraska, the Heroes game, and Wisconsin, which that's a matchup between what have been normally the 2 best Big Ten West programs. Those are Iowa's projected 3 permanent rivals. For Maryland, it's Indiana, Rutgers, who along with Maryland are currently the most recent schools to have joined the conference. When UCLA and USC join, Maryland and Rutgers will be the second most recent schools to have joined the conference. And also Penn State. Penn State and Maryland have a very one-sided rivalry, but it is a rivalry nonetheless. For Michigan, Michigan State and Ohio State are preserved, and Michigan adds on UCLA in what will be a new rivalry between the two. For Minnesota, Iowa, Northwestern, and the battle for Paul Bunyan's axe against Wisconsin. For Nebraska, Iowa, the Heroes game, Purdue, who they face as a common opponent in the West, and UCLA, who the Huskers had, I think, a home and home, not a home and home, but like a home and road, or whatever you call it, series against UCLA in, I think, 2012 and 2013. And then for Northwestern, Illinois, Minnesota, and Rutgers. For Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and USC. Boy, that right there, that is a tough permanent rival selection. But that, just going from what I've seen and how really the teams that are viewed as the better teams get the tougher draws, goes to show that the Big Ten still widely views Ohio State as the team to beat in the conference and as the best team in the conference. I'm disappointed that USC didn't get a permanent rivalry with Michigan State, just because that would be an interesting battle. You pit the Trojans against the Spartans. Could be a rivalry called the Battle of Troy, for example. And that's not my idea. I got that off the web. I think it's really cool. For Penn State, Maryland, Michigan State, they play for the land-grant trophy every year, and Ohio State. Those will be Penn State's permanent rivals. For Purdue, Illinois, Indiana, and Nebraska, and Rutgers, not finally. Rutgers will be Illinois, Maryland, and Northwestern, UCLA, Michigan, Nebraska, and USC. And USC, Ohio State, UCLA, and Wisconsin. They faced Wisconsin before, and I think the Holiday Bowl or some other bowl that's gone on previously. And Wisconsin is a traditional Big Ten West powerhouse. So that'll be an interesting rivalry. I think that USC and UCLA, USC getting Michigan, for example, along with Wisconsin, UCLA getting, I mean, look, UCLA got Michigan. They also got Nebraska, who's traditionally a blue blood program, and a program that I think will get out of the gutter trash they're in sooner rather than later. They got tough schedules, tougher schedules definitely than Rutgers, Northwestern, and Illinois got. And UCLA recently has been among some of those programs in success. From the late Jim Mora era to the early Chip Kelly era, UCLA was a pretty bad football program. Ohio State, obviously getting Penn State, Michigan, and USC makes it very realistic that Ohio State could lose 3 games in the regular season for the first time in over a decade with that kind of permanent rivalry schedule. For Michigan, getting Ohio State, Michigan State, who, despite some of their recent failures, mind you, very successful under Mark D'Antonio, and they went 11-2 with little talent in 2021, so they're a good program. And UCLA, who's, despite having recent failure, they also have found some recent success, especially on the offensive side of the ball, much like USC, the two brothers of Southern California. They probably hate that I call them that because they don't like each other, but they have a lot in common. They're from South California. They develop really good quarterbacks who have mobility. They run the spread, and they can't coach defense for the life of them, which is why if USC and UCLA have to travel to Ohio State and Michigan, respectively, on the road, I think they will get smoked until proven otherwise. But that's just my opinion. The immediate future, I think that the 3-6-6 scheduling, the way they did it, is something they might have to readjust if certain programs are, if certain programs rise up and have consistent success and some of the traditional powerhouses fall, the schedules might have to change because they are definitely tailored not just to resources and program tradition, but also current and recent program success. Ohio State, being viewed as the best Big Ten program, obviously got the hardest Big Ten schedule. USC and Michigan, being a tier below Ohio State historically, but still at a blue blood level, got the second or third hardest. UCLA, rich football history despite some of their recent failures, they got a tough schedule. Wisconsin, Iowa, they got some tough matchups as well. Penn State having Ohio State and Michigan State. But really it is the two new additions, USC and UCLA, and Michigan and Ohio State, that I think got the hardest schedules. Projected, of course, but hardest by quite a wide margin. I think that this new Big Ten will be more balanced. That's more so due to the scheduling than the teams that are a part of the Big Ten, though. It's not like the Big Ten is adding... This goes to the balancing as well. The Big Ten's not adding a team that will immediately be the best in the Big Ten. I don't think USC and UCLA are going to be the best in the Big Ten. UCLA will probably be a middle of the road to above average Big Ten program, which will be a good program nationally, and USC will be a top half Big Ten program. Probably a little higher, but we'll have to see because, again, Lincoln Riley, Big 12, Pac-12, I guarantee we'd have success in the Big Ten, but that success would look a little different and some expectations might have to be tailored. I still see this as a conference where the Ohio States, Michigans, Michigan States, Penn States, and Wisconsins will have an easier time winning it because of geographical location. They won't have the same travel fatigue, which UCLA and USC will always have unless other Pac-12 members are added, which is, and hence why I want more Pac-12 members to be added. And plus with the weather And with traditionally how the Big Ten is operated, two schools coming in with the fancy spread isn't going to change the fact that every school in the Big Ten, except for Ohio State, whether it's a spread, whether it's pistol, no matter what formation it is, it has some sort of pro-style physical run game, offensive line trench play element to it. Again, outside of Ohio State. Because while they do have good trench play, and they do have good running backs, they have enough talent and enough great schemers on the offensive side of the ball to also have elite skill position talent. That's all I wanted to say for this video. I just wanted to talk about future scheduling, what conference realignment looks like with the Big Ten currently, and just throw some thoughts out there. Please respond to my thoughts in the comment section below, subscribe if you haven't already, and follow this channel if you're listening via Spotify. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye.